All right, you're tuned into a very special episode of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. I'm your brother Ogod from Hip Hop News Uncensored. And sitting across from me is my co-host.
What up, y'all? It's your man Sam and Viral Hip Hop News. Like my cuz said, man, you're in the building for a very special edition of the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast. We got a special guest in the building. We got Demetric Muhammad, out of Memphis, Tennessee, on the podcast. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, brother, I'm doing fine by the grace and pleasure of Almighty God.
Absolutely. That's a pleasure. Pleasure to have you on. Thank God you look good. You look safe. How is everything in Memphis, Tennessee, given everything we got going on right now? Let's start with COVID and the pandemic. How's everything out there?
Well, brother, our city has, similar challenges as other cities. The challenges, of course, getting everybody to participate in wearing, personal protective equipment and to practice social distancing. I think it's safe to say we're in uncharted territories, and this pandemic has really altered life as we know it. And so, but we are grateful that we have not had as many casualties as some other cities, even though right now the Deep South, where we are, is experiencing an overall spike in positive COVID testing.
Awesome. So, Mr. Muhammad, you remember the NOI, Nation of Islam? You hit me up the other day on the email. You wanted to come on and talk about, I think Nick Cannon, some things are going on with Farrakhan right now in the media. You can jump right into it, brother. Let us know what the premise is.
No, without a doubt. I through my good brother Louis, reached out to, just to engage and participate from our perspective in a conversation that has been indirectly and directly relevant to us, as our brother Nick Cannon has been called on the carpet and is being made to apologize for certain statements that he made. And for what we really feel is that he has had a positive view, a positive relationship with the Honorable Minster Louis Farrakhan. And, we wanted to be able to be a party to a conversation about us. And most of the time, news organs, especially mainstream news organs, they want to talk about the nation, but they don't want to talk to the nation. And so we're happy to engage with brothers such as yourself, who are open-minded, who are fair, and who are interested in giving everybody an opportunity to speak their truth. And so, I'm just really looking forward to, talking about this issue as relates to Nick Cannon and Minister Farrakhan.
Yeah, we talked about maybe just a couple minutes ago how it seems like it's an unscaled balance when it comes to the conversation. Now you have Jewish people that are openly allowed to talk about the Holocaust and their the travesties and the terrible things that happened. But when we bring up the conversation of us being the original children of Israel, then we start getting anti-Semitic, this, that, or the third, and we don't get any dialogue or any dialect. They don't want to get any understanding from us. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, I think it goes back to the history of our enslavement in this country. We have to remember that there was once upon a time a special set of laws for Black people called the slave codes. Yeah. And one of those laws that, many people have forgotten about is that it was against the law for us to read or to become possessors of knowledge, because the slave masters always understood that knowledge was the path to ultimate liberation. And so in the modern era, you have, the strong and prophetic voice of Minister Farrakhan, not just being a bombastic preacher of religious truths, but the minister has assembled a team of historical researchers, of which I am a member of. And we have begun to assemble and amass historical documentation that gives many of the heretofore hidden details of our enslavement. And really, for the first time in history, is showcasing Jewish misconduct in the Black community that flies in the face of the popular narrative that they have been our friends.
Now, I'll come out and just blatantly say it is Louis Farrakhan anti-Semitic? Because it seems like everybody's throwing that on him and saying, "Oh, he said remarks," and it seems like he's just written off as anti-Semitic by the other side. What's your thoughts on that and that word?
No, brother. Minister Farrakhan is not anti-Semitic, but these groups like the Anti-Defamation League, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Southern Poverty Law Center, we could certainly consider them to be anti-Black, because while Minister Farrakhan has shined light on Jewish misconduct in the Black community, many of these other organizations actually are guilty of wrongdoing and criminal activity with regard to the Black community. They have, in large part, opposed all strong Black leaders. Certainly, this label as an anti-Semite has been weaponized against strong Black leadership. Marcus Garvey was opposed. Malcolm X was called an anti-Semite. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was called an anti-Semite. Even Dr. King was called an anti-Semite. And now Minister Farrakhan is in the good company of all of those great brothers from our history as a people of challenging Jewish misconduct in the Black community that goes all the way back to the slave trade and comes all the way up into the modern time, civil rights era, Black Power era, you name it. And so instead of sitting down with Minister Farrakhan and his team to discuss, this history that, I should add, has been documented and preserved by Jewish historians, scholars, and rabbis, they resort to name calling, falsely labeling the minister as an anti-Semite, and resorting to having conversations with our brothers, who's a beautiful brother that we love and respect. However, our brother's training, at least up to this point, is in the field of entertainment. And it's very telling that scholarly rabbis refuse to sit down with scholarly Muslim ministers. They choose instead to engage with our athletes and entertainers. So, long story short, our minister is no anti-Semite. He is a man that loves humanity, and but he's courageous enough to call a spade and to speak truth to power.
Me apologize for that. I had a sound that popped up on my. I don't know if you heard it, but now I would like to ask you about the Semite thing. Could you get into that and what that actually means, Semites?
Yeah, most dictionaries determine or define, I should say, a Semite as a group of languages and an ethnicity comprising Afro-Asiatic peoples and peoples who are from what they call in academic research the ancient Near East or the modern Middle East. So this would certainly include, you and I, people of color, African Americans, Black folk, Egyptians, the original Arabs, etc. So, the term anti-Semite has really become a euphemism for meaning anti-Jewish. But if you look at the dictionary definition, you would find that the Semitic people are people of color. And so it would kind of make it really difficult for Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam's membership to be anti-Semitic when there are so many Muslims who are Semitic people, which would mean we would have to be anti our own Muslim brothers and sisters and our own Black brothers and sisters.
Now you say you did some research on some of the atrocities that happened between Jewish and African American Black people. Could you get into what you found with your research and some of the things that they actually done to us in the past?
Well, I want to say it like this. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has published 3 books under the title The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. He also published a book called Jews Selling Blacks. And, just to provide some context, brother, because it's helpful to speak about this, with giving some context or backstory to it. And that is, Minister Farrakhan got involved in this controversy starting back in 1984. If you remember, at that time, Reverend Jesse Jackson was running for president, and he asked Minister Farrakhan to help him. Well, Minister Farrakhan didn't know at that time that Reverend Jackson, was, hated by certain Jewish groups. And the only reason why he was hated by them was because in 1979, he went and visited the Palestinian Liberation Organization. You remember Yasser Arafat.
Yeah.
So Jesse and Andrew Young visited with them. SCLC President Joseph Lowry had some meetings with PLO leaders. And so certain Jewish organizations were upset by that. So fast forward from 79 to 84, they began to antagonize Reverend Jackson. Some of his campaign offices were actually firebombed. Now, nowadays, presidential candidates can receive Secret Service protection, but back then they didn't. So Minister Farrakhan sent the Brothers of the Fruit of Islam to secure his Christian brother, the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr., to ensure that he and his family would be protected against this antagonism. So when the minister began to defend Reverend Jackson, that's when some Jewish organizations, specifically the ADL, called the minister a black Hitler. And so you could say the war was on at that point. And at a certain point, some of the minister's followers at that time began to, kind of look at and see, well, wait a minute, what's really going on here? What's the history on this? And we found, artifacts like the writings of Rabbi Bertram Cohen, who he was a rabbi. He was a U.S. naval chaplain, I believe, Navy or Army chaplain. And he started researching, the role of his own people in the slave trade. And he found out that, the Jews did play a prominent role in the slave trade. And he was so, taken aback at the research that there's an audio that you can listen to him speaking at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a little black college there, HBCU. And he talks about how his wife didn't even want him to go public with his research. But as a scholar, he was committed to, reporting his findings on what he had found. I mean, he couldn't hide from the truth. He's going to be a real scholar. And so, found out that they participated in the sale of slaves, the ownership of slaves, the financing of slaving shipping vessels, and that many of them, were not abolitionists, but proponents of slavery in the South. So this is just one aspect of Jewish misconduct in the Black community, but there's more.
When did the term anti-Semitic or anti-Semite become popular among Jewish people toward Black people in particular?
Well, it's kind of like a smear tactic, and I can go back in the research to the time of the early founding of the Nation of Islam, which is the 1930s. And in the 1930s, we were founded in Detroit. And at that time, our founder, Master Farrakhan Muhammad, whom we refer to as Allah in person, he began to work among Black people in a poor and impoverished area called Black Bottom, Detroit, where many Black people who had migrated from the Deep South and came to the North looking for a better way of life. But of course, the country was entering into the Great Depression. So they left poverty in the South to find more poverty in the North. And Master Farrakhan Muhammad confronted our people in a condition that had been facilitated by groups like the Purple Gang, which was a Jewish group established in Black neighborhoods to promote gambling, illegal alcohol sales, the numbers, prostitution, etc. In the 1940s, they began to call the Honorable Elijah Muhammad an anti-Semite and began to spy on his public messages. And so almost, you can kind of, be a prophet, if you will, and predict the future if you find a strong Black leader, and especially if he's talking about Black economics, us pooling our resources, doing for self. At a certain point, he's probably going to be called an anti-Semite. In fact, there's a man named Harold Braverman of the ADL who told a group of black students one time that, do for self and buy black campaigns are inherently anti-Semitic because it took dollars away from Jewish merchants who were operating in the black community.
Wow.
So, this charge is so frivolous. And one of the interesting things about it, brother, I did an article for the Final Call. I think it's on finalcall.com called "Be Careful, You Might Be an Anti-Semite If." And I just listed, some of the reasons why black people have been accused of being anti-Semitic. They say anti-Semitism is greatest among the educated among black people. They say anti-Semitism is more pronounced among the clergy class of black people. Because believe it or not, brothers, they say that the origin of anti-Semitism is actually the New Testament, Gospel of Jesus Christ. They say this is the origin of anti-Semitism. So essentially, they're calling Jesus an anti-Semite. So it's a term that I will sum up like this: once upon a time, someone was an anti-Semite if they hated Jews, and now it's like an anti-Semite is someone that the Jews hate.
Man, powerful. So, did you get a chance to see Deshaun Jackson for the Philadelphia Eagles backlash at all?
I did. I was kind of keeping up with what was going on with the young man.
How do you feel about that with him? And he didn't get released, but they did make him pay a fine. He had to donate to some Jewish communities, and him himself had to get education. Do you think when they say education, is it almost like they're trying to just get them to change their opinion on what they thought about the Jews and what really and historical facts with the Jews? That fair to say?
Well, yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I think that it's funny because people always say things that are critical of black people. They say that we need more black fathers in the home. They say that we need to do more business. They say that we got a high dropout rate. They talk about the school to prison pipeline, etc. But it's like you can't criticize, certain group behaviors and certain histories in the Jewish community. So when these brothers, their problem really to get at the root of it is that they have said positive things about Minister Farrakhan, and they have been, complimentary of the minister, whom, the Jewish community has deemed persona non grata. So it's like, if you say something critical, if you say something nice about the minister, now they force you to apologize. They make you donate money. They carry you through this thing to show forth how powerful they are. But remember, they deny that they have the power, but then they turn around and flex the power, if you criticize them. And I think that one of the most profound statements that I have seen is when many people in the Twitterverse who were spectators and onlookers of this scenario, they said, it's funny that Nick Cannon could be canceled by Viacom for words that he said about the Jewish community, but that the Jewish community could not use that kind of power to have the killers of Breonna Taylor arrested. So it's like, okay, a man could be counseled for words, but over here, this is an act of murder. And we haven't seen any of these organizations like the Wiesenthal Center and others do anything about it. So it's an unfortunate situation.
Are the Jewish people the real children of Israel? Who is the real children of Israel, in your opinion?
Well, that title, first of all, I would say this. In 2010, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did a monumental message entitled "The Real Children of Israel" in Atlanta, Georgia. That was also the debuting of Volume 2 of The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And at that time, the minister published a letter to Black leadership, including entertainers and celebrities, saying, you know, I'm in a controversy with the Jewish community. Please stand down. I'm not asking you to speak on my behalf. I'm not asking you to, you know, be out front with this, but just don't get involved. Don't feel like you got to be pressured to repudiate me, your brother, when you know I love Black people and I've been good to my people. And so in that lecture, the minister began to explain certain aspects of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad opened up the Bible, he opened up the Quran, and he said, okay, in the Bible, it said that the children of Israel were in bondage for a period of 400 years. And then he said, well, that fits the description of Black people's history in America, where we came over here beginning in 1555. So in 1955, that's 400 years. So you can check that box off in terms of the descriptions of the children of Israel and put that in a column for Black people fitting that description. Then he pointed out, he said the children of Israel names were changed. At one point, they was called things like Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. Then when they was in bondage, remember, they became Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, our names were changed. Everybody's seeing roots, and the brother wanted to keep his African name, Kunta Kinte, but the slave master had changed his name to be Toby. And right now, if I ask you two brothers, can you name one white person who has the last name Washington or Jefferson? You probably would scratch your head and we'd be here all night where you're just trying to find one white person whose last name is Washington or Jefferson. So that's another check in the column for Black people fitting that description. Then he's talked about how the children of Israel's, the boy babies, Pharaoh said, kill all the boys under a certain age. So we look at the Black community and we see how the Black male has been under assault from the government, from the white power structure. So essentially, he raises a theological point, my brother, and he proves, he doesn't just say it as though y'all say there's y'all, we say there's us, so we arguing. No, he opens up the scripture and he walks us through the scripture, proving it, description by description, that the Black people of America are the real children of Israel.
Gee, let's transition back to Nick Cannon, because that was his original comments. I think who was he on with? Was it Professor Griff he was on there with? Caught a lot of backlash, apologized. Then he on Cannon class, he had different rabbis and things like that. Now we're hearing that Nick Cannon may be back on Viacom. We just did a report on that a couple moments ago prior to this interview. What are your thoughts on that? Nick Cannon going back now to Viacom? Possibly, potentially.
You know, brother, man, I was blessed to meet Nick Cannon July 4th at the farm of Minister Farrakhan.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first time that I had met Nick Cannon. And I want to say that, you know, I was always impressed with him as a young man who had become very successful in a very difficult town. And so I respected him for his ability to maneuver and be successful in Hollywood. But when I got a chance to meet him and speak with him briefly and follow this situation, my respect for him has grown, because I see that he's not just a funny man. He's not just a song and dance man. He's not just a great MC. You know, the brother has depth. The brother is a substantive young man. And so if he can get back on Viacom, you know, I didn't realize that Wild 'N Out was like a business that has grossed over $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know a lot of people in the Black community, you know, was like upset because, you know, it's like he was apologizing. And of course, you know, we don't really want to see him do that. But I focus more on the fact that he was being forced to do that. He was being intimidated to do that. And the brand that he built was being held hostage. And so, man, at the end of the day, I want my brother to get what he earned, man. I want him to get his brand back. I want his good name to be restored again, because you punish a man for speaking the truth as he understands it. Well, you say you disagree. Okay, fine. Sit down and dialogue.
Yeah.
Let him bring what he is basing his opinion on to the table. You bring what you're basing your opinion on to the table. And that's dialogue. That's what civilized people do. And since in America, we have a constitutional right to free speech. I heard Minister Farrakhan say this one time, brother. He said that the right to free speech is what has kept peace in America. He said because in a lot of countries, you can't criticize the king. You can't speak out against the prime minister. And in those countries, you see there's always a coup. There's always a revolt because people who dissent against the government feel like they have to go underground. They can't be public with it. But in America, you can be public even if you disagree with the president. So people are able to air their dissenting views and peace is maintained because we have freedom of expression. These people now are moving us toward a draconian society where you got to be careful what you say, even if you believe it's the truth. So I want my brother to get back everything that he deserves and then some.
Awesome.
Powerful. Just a few more questions, man. We definitely appreciate you coming on the
Absolutely.
platform, tonight. Would you say, in your opinion, you talked about, the Jewish people on their role in slavery. Would you say that, Jewish people got to their position of power more so through slavery and conquest, or a do for self type of attitude? We know about how the dollar circulates to the community. We know how they, tend to do business with each other. Which one would you say how Jewish people got the power in America and in the world as well?
There's a great book called The Jewish Phenomenon, written by a member of the Jewish community, Mr. Stephen Silbigger.
Okay.
And it's a great book because he begins to explain some of the Jewish keys to success. And, these are keys that we should adopt as a people. Minister Farrakhan one time said, a Jew, to be called the Jew is a good name. He said, because a Jew is a person that if they are really that, they are in a covenant relationship with God, following the example of God's prophets and their teachings. So though that community that are sincere about that, we see that they practice certain principles of group economics. They have wisdom. Mr. Silbigger talked about especially how they share knowledge with each other. And I really liked when he talked about that because, sometimes we all bear witness, like you all getting started building your brand, building your podcast, right? So now you may have run to some brothers, some OGs in that field, asking them for knowledge, for help. Some probably was willing and free-hearted and shared with you everything that they knew. And there was others who may have been fearful or intimidated by you, feeling that, man, if I tell them what I know, they're going to become bigger than me, so I ain't going to tell them nothing. And we kind of have that sometime in our community. But Mr. Silbigger was talking about in the Jewish community, if this brother here know how to get a discount on shoes or on clothing or fabric or wholesale goods, he's going to make sure everybody else in his circle have that knowledge. So through sharing knowledge, and if knowledge is power, they are multiplying their power in a community. And they think as a group, where in the Black community, we have, in a very negative sense, kind of bought into this false idea of rugged individualism. See, we are trained in a way and we think that, man, I'm going to make it on my own. Here's a news flash. Nobody makes it on their own.
Yeah.
Everybody that's successful has help, but we kind of have a crabs in a barrel mentality. That's not how we naturally are, but that's kind of what slavery and our experience in America did to us psychologically, where we don't feel that we should work together as a group like the Jews do, like the Asians do, like even the Africans do. If you go into major cities, brother, They have what they call Jewtown, Chinatown, Koreatown. Sometimes you go and they have little Africa or little Haiti. And all it is that immigrants who have come together, they work together, they play together, they worship together, they share their resources. And before you know it, and this is key because we're in election season, I wrote an essay back in when the last election was called the no-show paradox, right? And what it was about looking at the immigrant communities who they don't place a lot of emphasis on voting. They don't really show up at the poll. They're no-show on election day. However, they get more from the American economy and more from politicians than we do, who many of us are shamed and beat over the head about voting. And we told our ancestors died to vote. No, our ancestors died to get freedom. Our ancestors died to have liberation, not so they could choose the lesser of two evils. You know, so there are a lot of principles that the Jews have and other communities have that Minister Farrakhan and Malcolm X and Dr. King and other strong leaders have been trying to get our people to do for a long time, but we got a lot of work to do.
Very powerful. We appreciate your time, Mr. Muhammad. Can you please let the people know if they want to hear from you further, or where they can hear from you further if they're interested?
Yes, sir, my brother. I'm kind of on all the social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and I have a website called researchminister.com, where we have published a series of books. Our latest book, which is something we might want to come back and talk about, is called "Didn't Y'all Kill Malcolm?" Busting the propaganda against the Nation of Islam, because that's always a subject that never goes anywhere. The idea that the nation killed Brother Malcolm.
Yeah, so about that, definitely.
We would love to come on and talk about that book. There's a lot of explosive research in that. That's the first book in 55 years since Brother Malcolm was assassinated that has come as an official work from the Nation of Islam on that subject. So we're very proud of that. And you can see our other books as well there, researchminister.com and also on amazon.com. So I appreciate the opportunity, brothers, to come on with you all, man. Y'all keep up the good work. We're proud of what you all are doing, and you're very needed because mainstream media is contracting and only allowing certain perspectives to see the light of day. And it creates a false sense of reality, as though everybody believes and feels the way folk feel in the mainstream. And so you all do a wonderful job of allowing those other voices to be heard. So I appreciate y'all letting us be heard tonight.
Without a doubt, man. Like I said, we're gonna definitely bring you back whenever you want. You're gonna be our go-to guy for those type of issues, NOI and all that, man. So keep in touch with us. Appreciate it.
Definitely, most definitely. Thank you, brothers.
Pleasure meeting you. Be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.